let me welcome today's guest speaker, Mr. Ashish Das Gupta. Currently, Ashish Da is working as a national training manager at Abbott. Ashish Da is a certified neuro-linguistic program practitioner, that is NLP practitioner. He is a certified instruction designer. He is certified digital content designer. He is a certified facilitator, certified learning and development manager. He is also a green belt, Six Sigma certified. He is also certified on mind mapping. He is a trained voiceover artist and trained thousands of professionals in his entire career. Wow, what a illustrious career. And we are very fortunate to have him with us today evening for the first episode of Stories with Kiran. And let us begin to interact with him. Welcome, Ashish Da.
Can you unmute? Ashish?
Ashish Da, you need to unmute.
I said that, so that is technology. I think what a great way of introduction. It's my great pleasure to be on a platform, to be as a guest to you, the first ever. Gives me, a lot of pride and honor and privilege. And thanks for having me here. Thanks for that very glorious introduction of yours. Thanks, Kiran.
Thank you, Ashish. And let us start, this interaction.
Sure.
And let me ask you, when I have, we know each other since long, and I have seen you, trained so many people, and they, they have grown in their career too much. But when you had, you had started your career as a medical representative, and that went on to becoming national training manager of MNC, mega MNC like Abbott. So, what attracted you to choose training as a profession?
Well, Kiran, that itself is a story, in fact. I still remember I was erstwhile in a company which is no more existing now, and they had a blockbuster product. You heard the name of the product, but just because we are in live and a professional world, I'm not revealing this product. And it actually was having a turnover some 30 years back, had a turnover of 75 crores. Wow. But one fine morning, that product got sold and the company got reduced to 25 crores. And you can understand that 25 crores and 1,000 employees to sustain. And I just got promoted, got married, had a daughter, how to sustain, in fact. But the company chipped in and they said, you don't worry. We are putting this entire money in training, and we are going to grow those products, which until now was dormant, right? So it all happened. The training sessions happened, and we had something which is called a reprint session. And the reprint session was an interesting session, which was rolled out by the trainers, in which the direction from the chief, the CEO said that you guys need to train people, and you have to presume that these guys are a layman, right? They don't understand science. They might be belonging to arts background also. So you need to talk in a common language and to train them, and there the journey started. I'll give you one example, and this is very interesting. Somebody was explaining us something called cholestasis. Now, this is a bit technical. Cholestasis, I'll just tell you what is. Chole means bile, and stasis means stoppage or becoming stationary. We never knew what is cholestasis. So the trainer came in and he said that, let me tell you a story. And the story goes like this, that I basically belong to Lucknow, but when I came to Calcutta to be stationed over there, and I was flying back to Bombay, right, for a meeting, I was stuck in a huge traffic jam in Calcutta, in fact. I was stuck in a traffic jam and I was moaning, I was shouting, I was cursing people, I was sweating, I was having palpitation. I mean, it's a question of flight. And I'm talking about an incident which is around about 20 years back. And we only had Indian Airlines and Air India. And then I actually lost my flight because the traffic jam wasted everything. Now you say, what is cholestasis then? So if you can correlate to the traffic jam, then you'll get the meaning of cholestasis only. Here, you happen to be a human body, right? The road happens to be a bile ductule, right? And the destination happens to be from the liver to the gallbladder. So liver is Calcutta, gallbladder is Bombay. And if you have a very sluggish liver, what happens? The bile gets accumulated over there. It it is very toxic. So the inner layer of the ductules gets ruptured. There's a lot amount of bad effects which has happened. So cholestasis is bad, and that is what cholestasis is. I said, wow. I mean, I belong to the science background, but then what a way of interpreting. What a way of interpreting constipation, where they say that it is that where the water flows from the Hooghly River to the Bay of Bengal, but just because there's tremendous amount of silt, the water cannot flow. And you correlate that with constipation. And you say that, okay, for constipation, water is required, and the constipation, the speed of the water, the stuff like that, they say that. I mean, and we came out, we said that those days, there was no such term called business storytelling. And we came back very fascinated. First of all, what something happened, we understood the subject. And that is what you say in Hindi, that it maza aa gaya, it touches your heart. You become very fascinated about the subject when you start learning about it. Secondly is, it made us so competent that we could actually correlate that and be very good in teach back sessions. We could teach people as well, in fact. And when I was doing it for my own representatives, when I was teaching, I could really understand that, wow, what a way. And to see that people get trained by you through your stories, through your communication.
Ashish, it is
Yeah. So how can you go back to training once again? But the basic fact is simplifying things and communicating with people, see people grow up. And as you rightly mentioned, that I've seen quite a people growing up over than me, in fact, to higher levels, gives me a lot of joy. And the very, very fact that I would be actually simplify things and tell something which today, they say that business storytelling. In those days, it was called practical interpretation. Now it is business storytelling. So that's my journey. And so that's the reason why I am in training, love to be in training, love to remain in training forever.
Okay, great. So you said your strength is storytelling, or you love storytelling, and similarly, I also love storytelling. But
I know
tell
that.
me, yeah, yeah, and tell me how relevant that it is. That do you think storytelling is in training? How, what is the relevance, and how much relevant it is?
See, the basic fact is, uh, if I communicate with you, you come to my training and I communicate with you with a subject called emotional intelligence, with a subject called transactional analysis. I would be talking to you about facts, about data, about information, about logic, about analysis, and I have simply done it many other times. Or if you talk about mode of actions of scientific products and all, I mean, it just goes above the head. I mean, people don't relate to you, in fact. So it all happened accidentally that I started in a similar way to follow my gurus. And my guru, the person who trained me, is, and I've given an invitation for him to come on live, Mr. Shashikant Anand. So thank you very much for all the training that you've given me. So I thought that they really connect with people, and connection does not happen with sheer logic, with analysis, with facts and figures. Connection only happens by correlation and association. And that is only possible by storytelling, in fact. Now, I'll tell you, for example, in our own childhood days, if you talk about that sine theta is equal to this, cos theta is equal to this, tan theta is equal to this, or if you have to remember the entire emperor of the Mughal dynasty, you had a common thread, right? Sine theta is this. You have a common thread, and that is how you remember. So the human brain is actually wired to remember things by association, and we make our own stories to remember. So my question is, when I'll have to explain something to you as a participant, why not explain it in the form of an example? And when I give you an example, right, with the fact, it becomes a business story. And so what is business story? Business story is a fact plus a concept. And the context of it. I'm sorry, a fact and the context, and that makes it a business story. It's very relevant in training because it improves the retention. It improved the retention by 7 times, in fact. And there are studies to show that. Why it is relevant in training? Because in the very first place, that is a way of connecting with the audience. In fact, you're going to engage them, you're going to connect them, and they're going to comprehend it and remember it. So it's extremely, extremely relevant. And storytelling is something which comes naturally to us. We might not be understanding. So that's how I feel it's extremely, extremely relevant as far as training is concerned. Why training? I think talking between two people, coaching persons, storytelling is the best, in fact.
So, Dada, you have learned so much from so many trainers. You have got trained yourself. You have trained so many people. So, is there any scientific proof that storytelling really works? Any scientific proof, or yeah, and also you can share one of your experience how storytelling works. Does it really work?
First of all, Kiran, that's a very, very important question that you asked, because people say that fine, storytelling is good, but where is the scientific proof? And in my, in my tenure, in my experience as a storyteller, I'm really fascinated with the subject, and I was fortunate to get across to a couple of books and articles. And there were two articles which really fascinated me, which are credentials and testimonials about the profound, the profound importance of storytelling. And there are two. One is, I'll tell you a beautiful incident. This was in the year 2006, right? And it's a real event. Let me tell you the story once again. It's beautiful. And thanks for that question. A New York journalist known as Rob Walker, he was fascinated by the very fact that how stories are so important. So he said that let me see whether stories can improve the value, the commercial value of anything. Great. So he has done something which is amazing. He actually bought some second-hand items, which are called actually, what do you call that? Anyway, so let us put it as second-hand items. And second-hand items is not a car, not a house, not a refrigerator, very, very small items. It might be a plastic motor car key. It might be a car key. It might be a small horse bust. It might be a coffee mug, all secondhand, remember, all secondhand. And these items he purchased to the tune of 200. And the total expenses of his was $129. Imagine, just $129. And each item having an average cost of $1.25. Now, after he bought it, he actually gave a call to 200 professional storytellers. And he said that, can you do something for me? I'm doing a study which is called significant object study. Can you write a story for each particular item? They agreed. And now each particular item, for example, the horse burst, or that motor plastic key, or might be that toy car, or might be anything else, might be a second-hand cup, might be. They all had stories along with them, okay? And we can also discuss what stories are there, but then this is not the time actually. So those 200 items which were being bought without stories, second-hand items, paltry items, they were now having stories. And Rob Walker have done something now, which is extremely weird. He opened up his laptop and went into eBay. And after going into eBay, Kiran, what he has done is uploaded the pictures of all those 200 items, each having a story, right? And after that, there was a nail-biting anticipation. Well, after some time, something amazing happened. And I've just spoke about, he uploaded a horse bust, a plastic horse bust that he used, which actually costed 99 cents. That in eBay, with a story, got auctioned at a price of, just imagine, at a price of $60. 99 cents, $60. It's over 6,000% profit. 6,000, just with a story, Now, you can say that, come on, Ashish, that this is a flash in the pan and it's only for one item. But however, remember, he bought this entire items with $129 and he sold it with $625. I'm sorry. It's $625, which is phenomenal, in fact. And so that is a direct proof that if you add something, if you add a story with something, for example, this coffee mug which I'm having, if you add a story along with it, I can guarantee the story is very engaging. A 4-line story which is very touching, it will definitely improve the valuation. It's not what you say, it's not what you actually do. It's actually through a story where you actually make a people, the way you want to make him feel. And once that feeling touches your heart, the valuation of something goes up. For example, I'm talking about the watches which the James Bond's actors, they wore in
Yeah.
various movies, right? I know we have seen so many James Bond movies in Never Say Never Die and all that, and those dialogues make it my day and all. The watches, I still remember those Rado watches or those Omega watches, which was branded 007 watches, and one such watch, you know what, is costing $10,000, and there are buyers for it just because it has been made iconic by a Pierce Brosnan or by a Sean Connery. And what is this? This is a story, in fact. If you want further proof, just one line is 2010, there was a scientific experiment done in the Department of Psychology by somebody called Professor Dr. Yuri Hassan. He actually brought in 5 subjects, and their functional MRI was being done to see the blood flow in the brain, and it was all different. A, B, C, D was all different. I would say A, B, C, D, E. Now he called a professional storyteller. He said, "Can you tell a story which actually engages them?" He said, "Fantastic, not a problem." He said, let me do one thing. Let me do your brain mapping as well through fMRI. And his brain map was being done, and it was entirely different. Now, the brain mapping was continually being done through fMRI, all 6 of them now. And he started storytelling. At a certain point, Kiran, it was amazing. And I have that PDF along with me. I can show it to you. The brain mapping was exactly the same. The brain map of the storyteller and the brain map of the listeners who were engrossed in the story, it was absolutely the same. There was a small lag time because the time you tell the story and I listen, so that particular lag was there, but it was exactly the same. And Yuri Hassan actually, he says that it actually lit up those parts of the brain which are actually lit up as if they are facing the incident in reality, in fact. So powerful. And storytelling is extremely powerful. It has been seen. It increases the valuation of objects with a story. Secondly, there is a scientific proof. And of course, there's something else. I mean, you can always ask, what happens when we listen to a story, in fact? Are we tricked by a story? He said, you are being tricked with a story. And here I say that to all my viewers over here, did you ever fall in love? Come on, falling in love is not bad. So you can always say yes to it, right? It also happened to me. What happens when you fall in love, right? Because it was even Adam, I still remember, even Adam, because of the love of Eve, has taken that forbidden fruit for which he was kicked out of the garden, in fact. So that itself is a story. So that is love. And love is a beautiful story. And what happens when you fall in love? When you fall in love, or when you are, it is called, you get emotionally invested. And what happens when you become emotionally invested? Your neurocortex, the function of your neurocortex actually does not come into play. It's been totally dominated by your emotional brain and by such hormones or by neurotransmitter, which is called vasopressin, endorphin, oxytocin, and dopamine, in fact. And then your analytical, logical, mathematical senses becomes very, very submissive, and it has been dominated by emotions. That is exactly what a story does, in fact. So if you want to engage somebody, if you want to convince somebody, if you want to plant a new idea, if you want your participants to actually retain the stuff and you want to connect, I think that's no better way than telling a business story or a functional story or a simple story. And story is simple. A story is not a fairy tale coming into it. Story is an example with a context. It's a data with a soul, which actually makes a business story. So that's a proof, Kiran. I hope I could convince you that storytelling is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other day I was reading the book of Kendra Levin, which is a story smart.
Right.
And what that book says is why storytelling. So due to our evolutionary reason that our brain analyzes incoming data using story structure. And if incoming data is not in a story structure, our brain assumes that information and creates a story. Our data gets distorted. Hence, we should give data in a story structure. So
Absolutely, sir.
purpose of any communication is influence. So change behavior, attitudes, etc. We need to change the old story within the audience brain with a new story. So storytelling, according to Kendall Haven, is a vehicle to deliver the message, any message.
They are. They are. I mean, if you talk about Kendall, if you talk about David Phillips,
Yeah.
if you talk about Sean Callahan, uh, in fact, it's very, very important. It's very,
So
very
Dada,
important.
yeah, in this at this place, so coming so many weeks, we will be inviting many people like you, those who are from the field of storytelling. So they may be from training, they may be from advertising, marketing, or they may be from films, and they will come and they will share what actually happens when they create a story. So my next question is about the same. So many people, the many people are afraid of telling story. So can you give me a simple formula, with your experience, a lot of years of experience, to create a story or telling a story? Yeah, but hold on. Before you move to the
Okay.
answer, okay?
Okay. Okay.
I want to do something different, and that is, I would like to invite Prasad Rajgopalan, who runs a company called as Insights Productions, and they make wonderful films. And I can vouch for it as I have been his client since many years. So Prasad is the founder director of SFT, that is Stories for Training, which is the first OTT channel of the world for presenters. And it has got a library of 90 seconds animated story-based videos. And
Wow.
let us hear from Prasad more about Stories for Training. So Prasad, welcome Prasad. How are you? How are you doing?
Doing great, and thanks, Kiran, for hosting this.
Yeah, so
See,
great.
you're in advertising. As you know, the purpose of every communication is to influence. But to reach to that stage, every communication has to go through what I call is the Agni Pariksha.
Ah,
The first step is engagement. You need to engage that person. The second is after you engage, you get his attention. The third point is the person should feel okay, you are making sense. And the fourth point is influence. So it is a four-step stage for every communication.
yeah, so
Now, the first
this,
step is all obviously the engagement. As you rightly said, storytelling is the best way of engagement.
yeah,
And
so
given like my background as a film producer, so we got this idea ki, why can't we create a library of 90-second story based videos which can be a ready to use solution for any presenter. So as a presenter tomorrow, you are a trainer, you are having a presentation, and to start with you want to engage your audience. So it's quite say our stories for training is a ready to use solution. You just select a story, you play a story and engage the audience.
yeah, so at this moment, I would like to tell our viewers that at Stories for Training, we have a copyrighted formula of telling stories or creating a story, which is an 8-step formula, and which we impart in our lot of workshops, what we conduct, our webinars, and there are many trainers, those who have benefited so far with that formula, and we will tell you about that formula very soon. But Prasad, you just now use word of Agni Pariksha.
Right.
Okay. And now this period is of lockdown, and it is
Okay.
actually Agni Pariksha for many of us,
Right.
like or maybe every one of us. So what is your learning from this lockdown, or do you have any story relevant for this lockdown?
Okay. Can I share the screen with your permission?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do that.
Okay. So all the viewers, I would like to introduce. See, this is Stories for Training. As you see, it has a library of 90-second story-based videos. The stories are based on business parables, moral parables. So we have category of presentation, for value education, and Bollywood se Seeko. So I will right now play one story from value education.
An Air Force fighter pilot, long after retirement, meets the person who used to pack his parachute. Be aware and acknowledge the people who pack your parachutes.
So this is a very true story. This is of Charles Plum. He was a U.S. Air Force pilot, and he tells this story. He says, 25 years after retirement, he came to know that there was one person who used to pack his parachutes, whereas that parachute saved his life so many times. So during this lockdown, I suddenly realized. See, suddenly when my newspaper stopped coming, I stopped getting my favorite filter coffee. Then I was forced to think of the so many people who are involved in, like, all these years they ensured I got my newspaper. All these years I got my filter coffee. So even during this lockdown, one of the major issues was this migrant labor. See, the problem was this migrant labor was not part of our consciousness. We never knew they existed. We never said thank you to the person who got our newspaper. So, I mean, this is a big revelation to all of us, especially those who we stay in the gated community. So we are not thankful to all those people. So I would request those who are watching, they should screen this video to everybody who is aged between 5 and 15, so that they can start acknowledging the people who pack their parachutes.
Okay, 5 and 15. Why till 15? Why not?
See, from my own experience, I have realized till 15, my son used to every day come to me and say, "Appa, tell me a story." Once he crossed 15, he was telling me, "Appa, abhi pakao mat tum."
So that is a story for every father, in fact.
So I think this is the golden period when the stories can imbibe values in your children.
Absolutely.
Superb.
Absolutely.
Superb. So that reminds me, my son. I don't know, when I stopped telling him stories, and when he started telling me stories. So okay. So Prasad, what I would request you, since so many people are watching this live session, and would you like to, give some offer on Stories for Training OTT channel? What I will request is first you, in briefly, very quickly, you share how to use this channel you show, and if you can give some, something for our viewers today.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just again share the screen.
Yeah.
Sure.
Today,
And
so this Stories for Training has a library of stories, and if you take your mouse to any of the story theme and reflection is, you can read it. And also there is a search here. So suppose you put attitude, then once you type attitude, so you get a list of stories which you can use to talk about attitude. Right now we are in online meetings. You just need to share it and play the story. And during physical meetings, it is much more easier. And also you can copy the URL in your PowerPoint. You click it, it will directly go to that story. And I would love to share a promo code which would ensure everybody gets a free 1-month platinum package.
Yeah, you can just show the promo code on the screen. And I think this is a wonderful solution while online, like the way you are sharing the story right now. Anyone can share the story, and I love that Bollywood se Seekho section on Stories for Training. That's something wonderful. So SFT 30, SFT, S for school, F for fun, T for training, 30 is the code which you need to put, right?
Okay, and I'll share my number also. If anybody has a challenge of subscribing, they can always call me.
Yeah, or they can always visit Stories for Training Facebook page, where they are watching live, and they can enroll in the Stories for Training. So let us move back to Ashish Da. Now again, that question.
That question, yes, that's a very important question.
Yeah, tell me.
Before that, let me tell you something which is interesting. See, the moment my wife came to know that I had become a storyteller, and she looked at me, said that, what is new in it? And I was a little zapped, in fact. I said, what do you mean by what's new in it? She said that you are a storyteller for the last 32 years. From the day we got married, you keep on telling stories to me. I mean, in that connection, when you said that, Papa mujhe mat pak, I believe there's the same story everywhere. And I think we all live with stories, in fact. But back to Kiran's question, we all live with stories, we enjoy stories. But when it comes to corporate presentation, training and all, I hear people saying, Arey yaar, kahani mat sunao. Right, I'm sorry for this Hindi, but then they will always say that we want facts and figures and data. So this is what corporate runs with. We want numbers. And nobody tells a story, in fact. Now the question is why there is a taboo on storytelling. First of all, I was reading with Sean Callahan, putting stories to work. He said, never in corporate, when you're talking about or training sessions or in school and colleges or whatever, right? Do not say that you're telling a story. Do not tell that S word. Do not tell. Tell that story. Correct. Now, what is that story? Now, you need not be theatrical. You need not have that deep voice and sitting beside a fire and create that atmosphere. Stories can happen anytime, every time, by anybody. Everybody has a story, in fact. Now, what is it? You have to use a statement which is called a relevant statement. So this is a part of the storytelling technique. The relevant statement actually connects you to the story. Say, for example, if you want to exhibit a process that you have done and you are found to be successful and you want to impress the audience, right? You want to give an example. But my question is, how would you bring them to that example? You need to have a connect, and that particular connect is called a relevant statement. So you can always say that. Now, this is the time actually to tell you about something which I found very useful as a process, and it increases the convenience of people and it limits on time. If you allow me to tell an incident.
Absolutely.
I will never say that here is a story. See, the moment you say here is a story, people don't like to hear that word, in fact, because they think the story means Cinderella, Snow White, and all that stuff, right? Then you tell that story and it has to have, something which is called a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is that particular thing which has happened, blah, blah, blah. And the middle is the struggle that you had. I kept on trying and it would not happen. I kept on trying many different things and it would not happen. In fact, finally, I came up to a process. You want to give an example of the process and it worked. Until then, I actually have a strong reliance on this process and this is one of the most beautiful. Are you convinced about it? Now, there are two ways of doing this. If I tell the process 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, people just say, okay, no problem, right? And then your usual checking the mobile, laptops, and the style, in fact. However, when you say that, I have seen that, or you make it more credible by telling somebody who's important, right? They will look up to you. For example, I'll give an example that when a medical representative goes to a doctor, and especially from multinational companies selling recognized products, right? They will always do one thing is, what is the name of your product? Now, this is the name of the product. I am prescribing a product from Aegis. Thank you so much. And the communication ends over there. So my question is, why can't we start storytelling in the selling process? For example, if I go to the doctor, wish the doctor and say that, doctor, the last visit you were talking about the safety of my product, and today I'm here with an experience of a very important doctor, if you allow me. Now, who is that doctor? And I name a doctor of repute who has been revered by the doctor I'm talking to, and I will share his experience in the form of a small story, right? And then I say that, sir, what is your impression on it? And remember, as Mr. Prasad has rightly pointed out, 90 seconds is a maximum time because you have a span of control, right? 60 seconds is better. 1 minute is better. 90 seconds is a maximum time. And the question is, you need to be prepared. It cannot come automatically. You need to have a store of stories with yourself, and you need to come prepared. So for example, if I'm meeting a doctor, if you're going to a training session where I'm opening the training session and I feel people are coming with a lot of, fatigue, frustration, anguish, what is going to happen and all. Uh, Let me tell you something which is more interesting. I talked about a couple of hormones which makes you emotionally invested. There is a group of hormone which makes you jittery, which actually makes you more alert, which are called devil's cocktail, and the other is called angel's cocktail. So it's a beautiful word. Cocktail, no one is going to forget, in fact. So the good cocktail is angel's cocktail, which makes you emotionally invested. And the devil's cocktail happens to be that cocktail which makes you alert, right? For example, when you see a snake in the night and you shirk back, that is because of cortisol and adrenaline, right? Now they come with all that hormone to you, especially if it is a sales review. My goodness me. And if the chips are down, you can understand the boss is going to give me. So my question is, you want creativity from people. So why not neutralize that devil's cocktail with angel's cocktail? Tell a story, and tell a story, and telling a story, do not say that S word, just tell that story in the form of an example, right? And giving it a context. Right? So it becomes a very, very engaging discussion, very convincing, very connecting, right? And becomes applicable. People get convinced about it. So there you are, Kiran. I think I could satisfy your question.
Wow, wow. So you actually really answered, why people are scared, using storytelling in
I would
businesses.
scared, or I would say that people are really annoyed when they hear that S word.
Yeah.
S is story. I won't use that word, in fact, but I will tell a story.
Yeah, yeah. But many people, even I have come across people saying, "What storytelling? मतलब story क्या बताता है?" But then this is where we need to tell them कि how to use storytelling in your day-to-day business. You may be a student, or you may be presenting your project, or you are a trainer. Whoever you are, you can use this format of storytelling, and you can convey what you want to convey. Actually, that gives me an idea, Dada. If we can do another session dedicated to to get to know more about Angel's cocktail versus Devil's cocktail, and also about speaker neural coupling. These are few scientific things which will be able to explain what is functional storytelling. So, are you okay? Can we request for another session from
Absolutely
you?
so. Absolutely so.
Great,
Absolutely so.
great. Thank you very much. And
Thank
let
you.
me let thank you very much for being here. And let me move to Prasad for a while again.
Okay.
So, Prasad, uh, tell me stories for training. Okay, how we can use it for engagement, soft skill training, and why SFT? Can you tell me why SFT?
See, like Ashish just said, see, uh, especially during a training, like to give you a recent example, like last week, a client of mine, I was speaking to him. He was saying, they had invested a few lakhs in a technical seminar in Dubai, just before the lockdown over. And he was saying, 50% of the people, they were on their laptop, 50% they were chit chatting. And they started the seminar, and he was saying, we got so frustrated. But the reason is we need to understand why the audience is behaving in such a way. Like Ashish said, they were induced by devil's cocktail. So as a presenter, we need to first neutralize that devil's cocktail. And how do you do it? You by the angel's cocktail. You show a story. You tell a story. So stories for training is one of the fastest solution to become a storyteller. So people can say today many companies are using it, a lot of trainers are using it, and and we have today a library of more than 100 plus stories,
Oh,
and
wow.
every story is dubbed in English and Hindi, and
Beautiful.
going forward we are going to dub it in other languages also.
That's lovely. That's lovely. That's lovely. I think this is the first ever channel that we have seen in India having a repository of such wonderful stories, both in English and Hindi, right, Prasad?
Superb,
So my heartiest
superb.
congratulations to you.
Thanks.
Superb. Thank you, Prasad. And we are at 6:11, and as our commitment, we will end at 6:30. But before that, I am receiving a lot of questions. But before that, I would like to welcome Mr. Krishnan Srinivas. He's here, and he's, Prasad, if you can briefly
Krishnan,
introduce him.
okay. Krishnan, can you unmute? And
Yeah.
Krishnan is my old friend. And luckily, I happened to reconnect just last week uh, through LinkedIn. And even he has a very illustrious career. He started in GSK as a product manager, and is a national training manager of Reckitt Benitzer, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Ricket Ben
The
Kaiser.
Reckitt Benitzer.
Is it so, Mr. Kiran? Am I right?
I am Mr. Krishnan. Yeah.
Krishnan,
Hi.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Sorry for
Krishnan, can
misspelling.
you share your experience of stories for training? And thanks for sharing your post. He had posted about stories for training, and so many people, they called me after looking at that post.
That's the
Okay.
power of social media and digital marketing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Krishnan, please share your thoughts.
Briefly, if you can give us feedback about this session also, and about storytelling, because we have few questions lined up.
Oh, there
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. You can call me as Krish. Maybe some of you must be wondering who is this sannyasi who has come to Zoom. I am not a saint or a sage or a sannyasi. I am very much a grahast. I have my wife and 2 children. I began the career in GSK as a medical representative, then moved into training, then area manager, and then training and then product management. Recently quit my job from Reckitt Benckiser as SFE, Salesforce Effectiveness. I was also doing training. That's about me. I am 57 completed, and I have spent almost, say, about 12 to 13 years in SFE, and before that, about three and a half years in training, especially pharmaceutical. I'm a pharma guy. I done my bachelor's in botany in Laila College and did my master's in finance in Bellinger, Mumbai University.
Super. So Ashish, it is a similar career path like you, what Krishnan has. So Krishnan, what is your feedback about these sessions? How we can improve this, or a feedback about this session stories?
Very interesting. I'm also learning a lot, and I told Prasad last week when he met me, it's a marvelous initiative, probably the first of its kind, the entire training domain. It's going to do really very well. I think right now you are doing very well, and the way you have connected with people. I have also brought in Sukesh Mandal, who was with me in my team in May Johnson, and then subsequently Reckitt Benckiser. So I think this is we are making baby steps. It will go a long way, and all the very best.
Super. Now let me request all the participants. You may type your questions in the chat box so that I can ask them to Ashish Da or Prasad.
Sure.
So, please.
And Kiran, I have two enthusiastic colleagues of mine on board. I can see them.
So please introduce them, and till the time let other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So one is Mr. Rohit Varmani. He's based in Delhi as a training manager, illustrious career, and equally illustrious is Mr. Krishnan Biswas. I do not know. I mean, they are appearing to be on mute. So if you can unmute yourself and say a few words, that would be great, in fact. Anyway, but then we can always watch at that question which are coming and.
Okay, so there is a first question on, I think you have explained it earlier, but if you can briefly explain again. There is a confusion over the term story and storytelling.
Okay.
So how you can differentiate between story and storytelling?
See, storytelling is the process of telling a story. Food and eating. So food is what you eat. So the process is storytelling. What you say is a story. Getting my point? And story, once again, I said that it's not a fairy tale. Once again, it is your data with a soul. And I'll make it a less complicated. It is the fact with the example making it relevant. When you say it in a very, very normal tone, there is no theatrics in it. When you say in a very normal tone, as you talk to your wife, your children, your colleagues, that is a process of storytelling, in fact. It's a very, very simple process.
Wow.
I mean, you need not go to the studio and learn, is that when I was there yesterday, what has happened? That would be really hilarious. I mean, I will tell a story in a very normal way, in a very normal tone. That's a business story, in fact. So that process is storytelling, and what you say is a business story.
Okay, great.
Or a story might be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think Mr. Yuganda, he has a question. You may ask quickly.
Yeah, hello everyone. I just had a question. I don't know who will be able to answer it or not, but I just feel that listening about the storytelling and all, I just wanted to know if I want to promote myself or my academy or something like that. So can I
Mhm.
use a story, and that story should that story be a real story or a fictional story or an imaginary story? So I just wanted to know an idea. I just wanted to
Yuganda,
get an
thank you
idea.
very much for that very interesting question, in fact. So you want to promote your academy, and it has to be a realistic story because you're promoting it. You want your people to actually know exactly about it, right? So there has to be a credibility about it. So that becomes a credibility story, which we call as a value story, right? There are many stories, in fact. There is something which is called a clarity story. Okay. There is something which is called a story which actually nullifies an anti-story. Say, for example, I'll give an example. So you have an academy, right? And your story becomes actually your vision, what you want out of it. Okay, and which is actual, which is a reality, right? Because your academy is a reality, so the story is real. So this is my vision. Now you go somewhere to promote your academy, and I say, hey, come on, Uganda, I've seen many such academies. Might happen. So there, once again, you have to tell something which really attracts me, and that is a value story. I'll give you an example. In many of the cases, they say that, come on, you companies are really commercial companies, and you can do anything to butcher the patients for money, in fact. So what you require is you have to improve your credibility. And what I need to say is a value story. And that a story that I say that, doctor, 10 years ago, there was a problem in the quality control with one of our products on the way of its shipment from Netherlands to Bombay. It happened with only a part of the product, but a product which is worth 10 crores, in fact, was being thrown out to the Arabian Sea. And doctor, that actually talks about our value regarding customer care and the care we take for patients. Does it convince you? This is a real story. Are you getting it? So you have various forms of stories. So what I'll request you is take up this very, very topic of storytelling. Australia is a place where Sean Callahan is. He's a person, he's a citizen of Australia, and he propounded this very, very idea of storytelling. And he says so. I mean, there are many stories. You can read this book, Putting Stories to Work, by Sean Callahan. He stays in Australia, very famous. And he talks about various stories. And business stories are real stories, in fact, because they are not made up. Otherwise, it becomes a cockle story, right? Which the corporate says. Does it
True.
satisfy you, sir?
Yeah, that satisfies my answer, my question. And I just have one more question. What about storytelling while promoting myself?
100% so. Say, for example, you go for an interview, right? Like an interview is happening. Now, you need to say something. So instead of telling that I happen to be the best programmer, I'm just example, without knowing what you do actually. Say, for example, if you're a computer analyst, I do the best analysis of the world. I write a program like nobody. Now, instead of doing that, say, for example, if you give an instance in which, if you can show them that this is something which I made and I applied it and some beautiful solutions came out of it, right? And this is me who have done it, sir. What have you said? You said a story about yourself. For example, in an interview, you really ask people, tell me a time in which you happen to be under deep stress and you could come out of that stress. Now, there are many theoretical answers to it. But when that particular person talks about a story in the past with a lot of credibility, that becomes a story. Of course, yes. When you're promoting yourself, this is the best way of actually relating to people, talking examples of what you've done in the past. Remember, add the time and place along with it. That gives a credibility to it. Say, for example, when you said that, when in 2019, in midnight, I was opening my laptop and writing this program. That actually adds credibility. Why? Because you have mentioned that place, you have mentioned that time, in fact, which actually acts as a signpost, and people has, and then you go into the flow.
Super. Thank you. Thank you. I think we have few more questions and we have to be quick. Prajakta has a similar. She has said she has got same some question regarding this topic only. So quickly you
Does
can
it
ask.
does it satisfy you, Prajakta?
No, no. I think Prajakta has to ask.
Prajakta has, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, you might have answered this before, but I just wanted, you said that real life stories add to the credibility. So what if what if you don't have a story and you just make up a story and you try to appeal your audience with the story? So what do you think will that
I answer your
attract
question. It's
people towards your
beautiful.
brand, or will it not connect with people, or how does that work in regards with
Beautiful,
storytelling or
beautiful,
story?
beautiful. Can I answer you? That's a beautiful question, let me tell you, right?
Yeah.
Every time you might not be having a story because you are not a superwoman, neither am I a superman. Correct? So there are stories which have been collected from other people as well. For example, I generally tell a story of Pig Island, which is not my story, which is a story from a book of Paul Smith, which is called Have a Story to Sell. Now, when you tell this story, you quote the name of the person from where you have got this story, right? And that adds credibility, in fact. One. Secondly, if it is a story where you do not want to reveal the name, not a problem. You can always say that, I knew somebody and let's call him Jim. So people say, people comes to understand that Jim is not a real name. It's a made up name, right? And you said that, what Jim has done, he has done something which is like this. So what you have heard is a real story, not related to you, not related to your, your own circle, but you have read it somewhere, you heard it somewhere. You add a fictitious name and say that this is not an actual name. I'm just putting a name to it. And then you tell the story. However, the fact has to be real because you're convincing somebody. So you have to convince him with real facts, but the name and the place might be made up. And it might not be your story as well. It might be stories which you have collected. For example, I just heard this small parable which Mr. Prasad has shown us, the parachute story, in fact. You have many stories from various books. For example, Shiv Care is very good in this, right? You have Stephen Covey and why. So, for example, when I talk about paradigm shift, right? I will always say that I have read in a book of Stephen Covey that there was a huge ocean liner moving in the Pacific, and it got a signal that it has been told to change its course. And the captain said, "Why should I change my course? Because it's a huge ocean liner." And he said, "Who are you?" This is the captain speaking. And the reply came, "This is a third-class seaman." He said, "I'm the captain of an ocean liner." He says that I'm a seaman in a lighthouse, which only means that if you move forward, your ship is going to bang against the lighthouse and it would be shattered. But listening to it, the ship actually changed its course, in fact, by the instruction of a third-class seaman. This is called paradigm shift, when your mind changes its course to a different direction. Now, where did I say that I was in that ocean liner? I was the captain, or you happened to be in the lighthouse. But when I say that, and these are all parables, when I say that, I will say this is a parable from Stephen Covey. And when you say that, it's perfectly fine. You have read it somewhere, you heard it somewhere, and you say it. It's not necessary it would be your story. It can be somebody else's story. But give that person the credit.
Just to add to it, what if, or is there any chance that you don't have anyone to refer, or like you said, okay, it's not necessary that it should be your story. What if the other person also doesn't have a story? So in that case, what would you?
It can be a fiction story also.
It has to be started somewhere, Prajakta. You need to start somewhere, and you need to start the process of collecting stories. And if you keep your eyes and ears open, every time there is a story.
Yeah, and
every time there is a story.
I think at the end of the session, Dada will, recommend few books which you can read, and they will help you to understand how to tell story or develop your storytelling ability.
Absolutely.
Also, you can attend one of the seminars arranged by us, that is from Stories for Training, and there we give fabulous formula, 8-step formula, which is a copyrighted, where you can build your own story. And I guarantee anyone in the world can build a story. But
It's so easy.
yeah, it's so easy. So okay, Dada, there is another question from Sukesh, which is a very important question.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and many of us must have or might have this experience that Sukesh is asking: do you really think that training is still an underrated department in India?
It is yes. It is. You said training underrated. It is yes. Why? Because training is something which is important but not urgent. This is my understanding for the last 18 years. Now, say for example, if I ask you to read a book, you have an option of reading it, you have an option of not reading it. And many of the cases, 80% of the people they don't read it. Now, look into this fact. You have something which is called the Pareto's formula. And the Pareto's formula says that it's the 20% of the people who have all the money of 100%. So if the world is 100%, it's 20% of the people who are successful. So the question is, training is underrated today because training will not give you results which are instant. It is a little long-term. You need to invest in it. But being a trainer, if you're a trainer yourself, if you're passionate about seeing lives getting changed, transforming, if you're passionate about your own communication, and if you are self-motivated, this is a profession of a lifetime. So this is what I can say.
Super. So Mr. Rohit is asking, do stories from same geography and culture appeal more to audience from which they belong? For example, we are in India, and can we refer Pig Island story or any story from the abroad, or should we use stories from this geography? Right?
Oh, come on, that's a beautiful question. One second, Kiran. Yes, Rohit, it is culture which actually binds us, right? And I was discussing with somebody. We as human beings, Homo sapiens, happens to be at the top of the food chain today. Now, is it not intriguing that why are we at the top of the food chain? Because we have alligators, we have mammoths, we have elephants, we have lions, and who are mightier than us. So how did we reach over here? Now, at the same time, can you captivate 100 elephants or 1,000 elephants in Lila Maidan? You cannot. You can only captivate them through something which is called a story, right? And the stories are stories of a culture. You're very right. When you talk something which is beyond your culture, might be people cannot actually connect. And when you cannot connect, it does not become a very relevant story. So it's very, very important because when you start telling a story, you really prepare on it and tell a story which actually relates to them, connects to them, and makes it very, very relevant. Very right. I hope it satisfies your question.